why this cannot be fixed.
There are 425 million guns in the United States, which is more than the population.
The problem here is Trump has been able to make the argument that this is a political prosecution and that he's being singled out unfairly.
Defend our nation.
You are saying we could have a cure for cancer.
We'll have treatments for many cancers in this decade, and they're going to come from India.
Downside is that it could potentially wipe us out. But let's start with the upside first.
The upsides are absolutely enormous. The potential uses of this are almost unlimited.
I only discovered AutoGPTs about a week ago and started writing about them. And after I started writing about them, Jeff Bezos followed me on Twitter and all kinds of...
This is WION World as One. Time now for World of Africa with me, Erik and Njoka. On the show this week, we delve into the realm of beliefs and the power that nature holds in some countries in West Africa, in particular Benin. Also, we tell you a rugby team that united the continent in jubilation and pride. Welcome to the broadcast. The show starts right now.
Britain's King Charles III started his state tour in Kenya. It is his first visit as a monarch to a Commonwealth nation, where he faces widespread calls for an apology for abuses committed during colonial rule. The palace says Charles, who is traveling with Queen Camilla, was expected to tackle the more painful aspects of Britain's historic relationship with Kenya during the 4-day state visit. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz made his third visit to sub-Saharan Africa in 2 years as conflicts elsewhere highlight the growing importance of an energy-rich region in which Berlin has traditionally had little involvement. He visited major energy producer Nigeria as well as Ghana. Critics say much of the impetus of the trip has come from the realization that Germany and Europe need Africa more than it thought. Kenyan President William Ruto has announced the impending removal of visa requirements for all African visitors by the end of this year. Ruto emphasized the need to eliminate visa restrictions among African nations, stating that such restrictions are counterproductive. As of 2022, only Seychelles, the Gambia and Benin permit entry to all African citizens without a visa. And Sudan's Rapid Support Forces now say they have seized an airport from the army west of the capital as the warring factions reconvene for talks in Saudi Arabia. The two sides have also been battling in the western cities of El Obeid and El Fasher in recent days, as US and Saudi-sponsored talks that aim to broker a lasting ceasefire restarted in the Saudi city of Jeddah.
We begin this week from Central Africa, where the M23 rebels in the Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo launched a new offensive north of the provincial capital Goma. Despite efforts to broker peace and other African countries marshalling their troops to help suppress the insurgency, fighting has continued unabated, forcing thousands to be displaced and hundreds being killed in the violence. Here's a report from Bambo.
Confused and in fear, these residents in Bambo, north of Goma, are fleeing to save their lives. Mothers clutching their belongings and children. Even the elderly had to scamper as mortar fire and rounds of automatic weapons were heard on the southern outskirts of the town. This village had been calm in recent months, but rebels destroyed the peace. It is reported that M23 rebels launched a new offensive north of the provincial capital Goma as fighting with pro-government armed groups continued further south. Panic-stricken residents sought refuge in government-controlled areas.
We were in Bambo when we heard the bombs detonating, so we fled straight away. Now we are on our way down to Kirima, but we don't know where our final destination will be.
When we were in Bambo, we heard that the M23 had just taken Kabizo. My aunts and their families took refuge in a house and was set on fire inside. No one got out alive. Everyone perished.
Earlier in October, in a rare victory against the Rwanda-backed M23, the loyalist militias regained the strategic town of Kishanga in North Kivu's Masisi province. In the same month, a military court sentenced an MP to death on charges of treason and involvement in the M23 rebel movement. The death penalty is often handed down in the Democratic Republic of Congo, but has not been applied for 20 years and is systematically commuted to life imprisonment. The accused was not present at the sentencing.
Faisant application de l'article 7.
Applying Article 7 of the Military Penal Code, the single most severe capital punishment, in other words, the death penalty.
À savoir la peine capitale, c'est-à-dire la peine de mort.
This is Kenyan President William Ruto and his Angolan counterpart João Lourenço called on the M23 rebels to join a cantonment or a military garrison or camp away from the public.
We believe that it is an achievable aim to engage in consultation, stabilize eastern part of DRC, and allow the people of DRC in general to benefit from their progress, from their development, and from stability and progress in their region.
The M23, which has captured swathes of territory in North Kivu province since 2021, is one of several militias holding sway over much of the region, despite the presence of peacekeepers. Democratic Republic of Congo's government has recently intensified security around Goma, North Kivu's capital and home to over 1 million people. The United Nations Humanitarian Agency says almost 200,000 people have had to flee their homes since the 1st of October in Rushuru and Masisi territory, north of Goma. Independent UN experts, the Kinshasa government, and several Western nations, including the United States and France, accuse Rwanda of backing the Tutsi-led M23, which Kigali denies. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Benin in West Africa is mainly Christian society, but people's ancient belief in the Voodoo religion is embedded in the culture. Believers see forests as sacred homes to the spirits and places of worship. But many of these are disappearing as urbanization and the demand for agriculture increases. Here's a report from Cotonou.
Benin is often regarded as the cradle of Voodoo, home to thousands of sacred forests which believers say are vital to their religion rooted in nature. In this forest in Bahozun, Voodoo priest Gilbert Kakpo carries out a ceremony offering local villagers a drink of blessed water. Voodoo believers see the forest as homes to the spirits.
In this place where we are standing, our divinity is the protector of women. If you're a woman who's had miscarriages or has given birth to stillborn children and you come here for rituals, you'll never endure those hardships again. If you have problems, such as witchcraft or spiritual attacks being put on you, then you can come for rituals.
But for decades, Benin's forests have been threatened, at first by anti-Voodoo attacks and then the expansion of farming and urbanization. Between 2005 and 2015, more than 20% of Benin's forests decreased, with the rate of deforestation continuing at more than 2% a year. As the government grapples with preserving the forest while developing the country, Voodoo worshippers worry the loss of its spaces could have far-reaching effects.
Agriculture is the main threat for the forests, and that's due to poverty. As populations are poor, they can't afford to buy fertilizer or gas for energy. From 2001 to 2012, we noticed that 14% of the sacred forest disappeared and 30% of the forests have been badly degraded, meaning that a huge part of their surface area decreased.
While Benin is a majority Christian nation comprising nearly half the population, Voodoo is embedded in most people's lives, especially in the largely Christian South. This man is known by his followers as the world's supreme spiritual Voodoo chief.
Human beings are scared and inviolable and must be respected. Whoever destroys a human being destroys the environment. The consequences won't impact only one person, but it will impact everyone in time and space.
Et qui détruit une personne humaine détruit l'environnement.
Today, millions of people practice it, turning to Voodoo priests to perform rituals to ward off evil spirits, overcome illness, and achieve professional and personal success. The government insists it is doing what it can to protect the spaces. It has banned cutting down trees without state approval, and since 2016, the government has invested some $3 billion into the culture and tourism sectors, which it says will indirectly help the forests. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
Nigeria hosted the 4th edition of Door of Return Festival, a symbolic annual event where diasporans of African descent were received through the same route that their forefathers were shipped from Africa as slaves.
This opening at the Lagos port is the passage that African ancestors are believed to have used during the pre-colonial era of slave trade. Only difference is, this is the festival in its 4th edition. With the symbolic arrival of some African diaspora guests returning on boats to land, signifying the return of the thousands of African slaves taken via same port over 400 years ago. They also experienced a walk along the 1.5-kilometer slave route to the ocean, a tedious walk that African slaves in chains faced as they trekked to waiting merchant ships.
Well, it was a hot, tiring experience. Fortunately, we weren't in chains like our ancestors were, but we were reminiscing.
Millions of Africans were shipped from the West African coast to a life of slavery in America and the Caribbean, fueling colonial empires. Sometimes sold into slavery by relatives, rival tribes, or captured during communal conflicts. African slaves faced a long trek to the coast for weeks before a lengthy sea voyage. Many died on their way, but those who survived endured a life of toiling in various sugar, tobacco, and cotton plantations. Guests were led to see relics from centuries ago.
We are, from 3 races, so I want to understand where the African piece of our ancestors went through and all of their experiences. So this is very significant. I'll be able to bring really good, real facts to my family and to my friends who were probably misguidance through all the years.
It's a symbolic connection, economic, spiritual, emotional, physical. And as they're coming, as they say, conversation breeds comprehension.
Badagry in Lagos State was a major slave port during the transatlantic slave trade. Estimates vary widely, but somewhere between 10 and 28 million Africans are believed to have been shipped across the Atlantic between the 15th and 19th centuries. However, this festival is happening at a time of heavy exodus of Nigerians in search of better opportunities abroad, but is an attempt to refocus diaspora Africans on the homeland. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has declared December 15th a public holiday to celebrate the country's Rugby World Cup win. The Springboks claimed a record 4th Rugby World Cup with a 12-11 win over Old Foes New Zealand. Ecstatic South African supporters who had called for a holiday to bask in the victory of their rugby heroes will get their wish, albeit a month and a half after the feat. Our correspondent, Kalden Ongmu, reports.
There was just 7 seconds left and one massive scrum to play to decide the winner of the Rugby World Cup between South Africa and New Zealand. Intense final moments of play. The Springboks led by a point and needed to withdraw a last furious push from the All Blacks. The two lines of forwards locked horns and South Africa won the scrum, making sure it would keep the ball from the ruck, prompting referee Wayne Barnes to call an end to a nerve-wracking and gritty final. The Springboks trounced New Zealand's All Blacks.
We worked our butts off to give ourselves plenty of opportunities to win that. But they're a championship side, and once they get their nose in front, they're a tough team to get ahead of. And they took their opportunities. Ultimately, it probably came down to our poor discipline, which hurt us in the end, but I'm pretty proud of the way we played under the circumstances.
It wasn't going to be easy. We had to put out a massive performance, given how the All Blacks have performed in the playoffs this far. We knew it was going to take a massive effort. Our boys dug very, very, very deep tonight, so proud of that.
And the morning after, South Africa's media gleefully expressed the delight of the triumph. The country and the continent was in jubilation.
It hasn't sunk in.
No. It was really great to see people, the diversity of people coming together to make sure that we as a nation, we come together and we support the Boke. And seeing Sia as well lifting the trophy, it was really something amazing. And I can't wait to tell my kids and my grandkids about it.
It's an incredible feeling, absolutely incredible feeling. The energy from all the local people, from everyone from Cape Town, absolutely unreal.
The first time was so iconic that a movie was made about it. Even the then president, Nelson Mandela, wore a Springboks jersey and cap. It could only be 1995. The fates had prevented rugby's legendary rivalry from featuring in another final until now. And even this was unexpected. It's the first final in which both teams have lost a pool match. The Springboks have surprised nobody. They were big favourites before the tournament and have possibly ploughed the toughest path to the final in tournament history. Their emblem is a native antelope, the Springbok, which is the national animal of South Africa. The team has been representing South African Rugby Union since 1891, when they played their first test match against a British Isles touring team. They get the name from the Afrikaans word a spring, which means jump, and the word bok, which means buck or antelope. This is because the Springbok has a unique cronking or strutting jump where its legs are stiffened as the animal leaps into the air. Since 1995, the New Zealanders and South Africans have played against each other 6 times at different venues and countries. South African rugby has evolved and the team doesn't seem to pause anytime soon. South Africa's Springbok World Cup win has brought the country together once again. This win has clearly proved that this is not just about the game on the field, but about hope and unity that this country is hungry for. This is Kalden Ongmu from Johannesburg, South Africa, for WION World is One.
A high-octane parade of color and bold outfits. Some of the best looks were spotted in the crowd with chic minimalism and a fresh approach to functional wear. Africa's fashion industry is growing rapidly to meet local and international demand, but inadequate investment limits its potential. Check out how the Lagos Fashion Week rocked the runway in this next report.
Featuring a mix of designers from across the continent, the annual fashion show celebrated and provided a market for local brands. participants highlighted African culture and craft in various colors and styles. This year's event attracted an array of fashion-conscious enthusiasts. According to a UNESCO report released during the Fashion Week, Africa's fashion industry is rapidly growing to meet local and international demand.
With everything from the Nollywood boom, our movies getting viewed around the world, to the boom in with music, Wizkid becoming a global sensation, to Davido, to Burna Boy, and a lot of other Nigerian artists, and our music just going global. And then the typical nature of the Nigerian, I mean, we love to party. There's no party like a Nigerian party. We're very social people. We have such a joy-to-live nature and such a bold personality. So with all of this, the fashion had to be right there to support and to be part of that growth.
Currently, Africa's fashion industry exports over $15 billion worth of goods annually. The earnings could triple over a decade with the right investment and infrastructure.
It's improving. We could get better, but it's improving. We're doing well. We're coming up with different fashion shows. We're making the fashion industry bigger and better for models like us and designers and, you know, people behind the scenes of fashion.
Across the continent, fashion continues to grow on various fronts, including in movies and films, in the form of textiles, garments, as well as accessories and fine crafts. All with a long history of prestige and symbolic of the African culture.
For the Lagos Fashion Week, I really do love the experience, and I came out here for the experience, and I will tell you it was amazing. It was really amazing. The show, the looks, the outfits, everything was just on check, and I really loved it.
The week-long Lagos Fashion Week had fashionistas, designers and industry insiders converge to celebrate the latest trends and the boundless creativity of African fashion. With this year's theme as standing the test of time, the event is the centerpiece of Africa's evolving fashion ecosystem that will continue to propel the African fashion industry towards a future where fashion is conscious, transcends boundaries, empowers communities, and ultimately drives a real socio-economic impact throughout the continent. From the Balmoral Convention Center, venue of the 2023 Lagos Fashion Week, Louisa WION World is One.
Thank you very much for watching this week's episode of Wild of Africa. Get in touch with us on all our social media platforms and share your feedback about the show there. My name is Erik Njoka. Keep watching WION World is One. Until next time, goodbye for now.
WION, India's global voice.
Israel woke up to a barrage of thousands of rockets fired from the Gaza Strip.
אזרחי ישראל, אנחנו במלחמה.
Hostilities have broken out between Israel and Palestine